Hey kids, it's Matt from Mad Dad Bricks back with another one of those block rockin' vids. Thanks very much for coming back to part 2 of this alt build of set 75346, the Pirate Snub Fighter. I really liked the ship. I haven't actually built it though, so I haven't built the set that they intended with this. I just dumped all the bits out and started seeing what I could build. But yeah, I know a lot of people don't like it that much. I like the ship in universe. I thought it looked really cool with the 3 engines straight across the back. It had a nice sort of like, had a nice waist to it. Yeah, thought the ship looked pretty cool. But anyway, people don't seem to like the Lego version of it that much for whatever reasons, just stacking plates. But I thought I'd go through and compress 3.5 hours out of footage down to about a quarter of an hour and see how we go here. If you paid attention while I was talking just then, if you paid attention to what was happening in the video, you could see I was trying to measure out where the minifig would go. One of the best tips that I've had from people when doing alt builds is make sure the minifigure can fit under the cockpit, because man, that's the last thing you want. Get to the end of a build and find the minifigure doesn't even fit, and put them in there with their helmet on. Now, if you remember from the last build, I matched a couple of pieces together, and that's sort of gave me the shape that I wanted to start with. So those 2 pieces were the transparent black canopy and one of those longer, skinnier black wedge plates. And I put the wedge plate with the studs on the side, sitting behind the cockpit to give a nice sleek profile. And so I had a bit of a play around with that to see how that might work and how far out that plate needed to sit from the midline of the build. And got to a certain point here and then, yeah, decided, look, I've had enough playing with all the bits tipped out on the table. It's time to get myself organised. So that's usually what I'll do. I'll spend a fair bit of time just playing and just seeing where the ideas go, organise everything, and then all these pieces are sitting in front of me for a reason. I got bored of sorting out all the bits just then, and I thought I'd use some time to flick through the instructions and see how the designers had put certain pieces together, why they'd included them in that sort of a way, and that gives me a fair idea of how things are used. One of the ones that I was looking at in this set was the bucket handles. So you get 2 bucket handles in this set. One's a spare, but yeah, I didn't really remember from the pictures, from the box art, why that was there. But they actually used the bucket handle as the control sticks. So they put them inverted with the two sides of the bucket handle sticking up, and put them in a clip inside the cockpit, and they're actually used as the control sticks for the ship. So anyway, I sort of included one at the end, just in the minifig's hand, just for a little bit of a nod to that, because didn't use it for anything else. So you can see how I've gone back to that lighter grey boat piece, putting the darker grey wedge pieces, the wings, in there, and then I'm building the wings out and back around the back of that light grey piece. So it's really hard to see in this. Oh no, you can see it at this compressed speed, but I had some longer tiles across the back which gave a bit of detail and a bit of well, there's a hole in there, so it actually creates a hole in the back of the wing, which gives a sense of some of the aerodynamic sort of surfaces, control surfaces, and some of the deliberate design for airflow. Oh, well, it's a spaceship, but you know, it has to go in the atmosphere at some point. And I also had a bit of a play with where the cockpit might go and started to build that on as well. Yeah, so you can see I actually at some point realized that the position, or the relative position between the black wedge plate and the cockpit was too small. They were sitting right next to each other, excuse me. And so the cockpit couldn't actually open, so I had to move it back, and I ended up putting a couple of grey ingots in there just for some detail, but also to give it that bit of spacing. Now, if you want to see this slowed down, I will put up a slowed down version of this. Maybe we'll go 4 times speed or something, just so you can see the process in more detail if you'd like to, and skip to different parts of it. But just for this video, as I talk through it, we'll just do it as quickly as we can, so we can get some other things done. So much Lego to build in so little time. Can't spend too much time on these things. Yeah, so you can see where I've put that long 2x plate all the way out. Now I'm starting to play with the front, how I might want those little winglets at the front to work. I deliberately kept a few of the angled, the wedge plates to the side when I was building the wings. And I spent a fair bit of time as well detailing the wings to a point that I was reasonably happy with before moving on to the front of the build. You would have also seen, perhaps, I had a little bit of a play with some of the engines after I'd had a look through the instructions and see how they put the engines together. I put some of those together and just held those up to see how they might work in relation to the rest of the build, see sort of where they're going to go. Excuse me. And I decided on this this triangular sort of configuration, but I also had a couple of other conical pieces that I use at the back as well, which gives it a little bit of a feel out of a F-18, which is my favourite plane. So can't blame me for making something that looks a little bit like that. So here you can see I've got pretty much the front sorted, looks pretty cool. I've got the wings fairly detailed. I'm starting to build out the rear and playing with what am I going to do with the back of this surface. I actually ended up just tiling it straight off, which doesn't look too bad because it's smooth. If it had studs on it, it'd look pretty weird because aerodynamically it's just like, what is that? But given that it's smooth, you can imagine that those, the horizontal winglets at the back would sort of do the job. Yeah, so now I'm starting to add some guns on the front. So I decided I needed some big guns on the front. So I've got an array of 4 guns all mounted there, and playing with the underside, trying to build some stability into it and some more detail. I had a couple of snot pieces that I like, some 2x2, those little 2x2 pieces with studs on the side as well. I put 2 of those back to back, and then put some of the round pieces on those to keep them secure. Excuse me. And I wanted to have one at the front and one at the back, to give a bit of a sense of some line running through the vessel underneath. And here I spend a fair bit of time detailing out the cockpit. Cockpits are quite challenging to get right. I don't think I've gotten this one right. I've had a little bit of feedback from some people saying, like it's a bit flat, which is cool. Because it is, the pilot's pretty much laying down to be able to fit under that cockpit. So if I do a second alt build for this, I might try and make it with a little bit more depth. Might go a Fang Fighter style or something like that. But for this one, that's pretty much good enough. I wanted to, so, there's always a reason for things, for decisions that you make as you go along. And one of the reasons, the reason that I wanted to have the pilot in this sort of laying down sort of position was, one, so that it was easier to build the cockpit a little bit up and over the top of him so his legs could fit under the dash, so he'd really be in the cockpit, really surrounded by it. But I also wanted to save pieces. I didn't know what I'd need as I went through the build, and so I wanted to do things as sparingly as possible so that I could use pieces to add as much detail as possible. So it's a bit of a balance. But now I've played with the set, I know what pieces are there and what's available to me, what I might be able to do with them. And even as I'm going through this process, I'm still thinking about things that I might want to do for the next one. So that's cool. Yeah, and you'll see from this point on, the number of spare pieces on the table won't change a lot until we get right to the end of the build. So what sort of tends to happen, as with most things, is some sort of Pareto rule, 80-20 rule. So you do 80% of it, and then the last 20 takes a fair bit of work, because a lot of what that involves is pulling things off, putting things back on, reconfiguring things, looking at it. Oh yeah, I don't really like the way that looks. I think I could do that better. Like, you just run your course of seeing things that you can improve. So here I'm still adding the engines and figuring that out. But yeah, really from this point forward, there's a lot of trying to detail things and add bits on. So I added those round bricks, the 2x2 round bricks, and I just left them with studs exposed facing forward. And like, to me, that sort of indicates like rockets or something like that, or could be bombs. They fall off pretty easily, so they could be bombs. Yeah, just having them nice and tight, close to the main fuselage looks pretty cool. And yeah, so you see most of the pieces are done now. I'm just playing with the way the back can look, trying to find the right tiling for that. As I said before, I ran out of wedge plates, ran out of snot pieces, didn't have anything to put a vertical stabilizer at the back, so just trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that problem. It's something I'll try and avoid next time. There's some bars and clips and things that I could have used to give things a bit of a nice angle, but for this one I'm just going with everything at sort of orthogonal 90 degrees to each other, and yeah, I think it works pretty well because I've got all of those main flight surfaces in line with each other, but then to break up the monotony of that, I've got the engines underneath. Yeah, so there you go. That's what it looks like. I'll slow this bit of the video down so you can have a bit of a look from all the different angles. So there you go. That's the whole build process. So I hope you enjoyed part 2. I made a little cinematic trailer for it, which I hope you like, so that we'll put that up on Rebrickable once it's done. And yeah, next step is putting that into Studio. So we'll see you for part 3. Build like mad, like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.